8 spine-chilling paranormal footage revealed. Unexplained encounters with the sinister and cursed. In the quaint suburb of Maplewood, beneath the soft glow of streetlights, something sinister rippled through the air. A darkness that festered behind white picket fences and manicured lawns. Amanda was oblivious to it as she rushed home, the day's fatigue weighing heavily on her shoulders. A single mother and dedicated nurse, her mind was a tangle of worry, dreams, and exhaustion. Yet, every night she found solace in her children, their laughter echoing through their small home, like music drowning out the noise of her demanding job. But peace is a fleeting fantasy. One evening, as shadows grew longer, something changed. It started innocently enough. The lights flickered, a gentle dance accompanied by the rustle of wind through leaves. For a moment, Amanda brushed it off. Just the house settling, she thought. But as night deepened, the shadows outside began defying reason. They twisted and stretched, moving with a will of their own. Her heart pounded. Was it just the late shift playing tricks on her tired eyes? A cold sweat dripped down her spine. Then came the whispers. The wind carried them, curling and slithering around her, whispering secrets she wasn't meant to hear. She pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, only to feel a chill that seeped deeper than the fabric could shield. Later that night, after putting Emma and Jake to bed, Amanda mindlessly scrolled through her phone. A video, innocent, she had thought, of her children playing in the yard caught her eye. As she played it back, a sensation of dread settled over her like a thick fog. There, lurking in the background, a dark figure, half obscured by swaying trees, its shape twisted, unnatural. Panic clawed at her throat. And Mr. Walsh, her neighbor, the retired cop sitting on his porch soaking in the evening air, wore an unsettling look. His gaze seemed too watchful, as if he was waiting for something to happen. Amanda recalled muffled conversations among the neighbors about children disappearing. Just rumors, she told herself, but the mask of normalcy around her neighborhood began to crack. Just tired from the night shift, huh? You're seeing things, ma'am, the officer had said, while dismissing her concerns. The condescending smile had struck like a slap. Alone with her fear, Amanda's imagination ran wild, feeding on the darkness that encroached her reality. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Determined to shield her children from whatever loomed beyond their doorstep, Amanda dug deeper into the neighborhood's past, uncovering stories of an abandoned playground, eerie symbols carved into nearby trees, and of parents who once lost their children. Mr. Walsh's history was stained with guilt, a protector who had failed before. Her heart raced as each discovery painted a clearer picture of the terror weaving through her life. Nights turned tempestuous, shadows darkened into menacing forms, and eerie sounds reverberated through the walls of her home. With fear gripping her heart, she knew she had to confront the looming darkness. Was it a warning she had ignored? As the clock ticked on, dread settled like a weight in her chest, and with it, one haunting question lingered in her mind. What was waiting in the shadows, and would it come for her children next? Amanda lay in bed, her heart thundering in her chest like a warning drum. The house creaked around her, each sound amplified in the death-like hush of night. Above her, the shadows loomed larger. Their ownership of darkness felt more pronounced with every flicker of the low lamp beside her bed. She strained her ears, trying to shake off the feeling that something was waiting. "Jake? Emma?" she whispered, casting a glance down the narrow hall leading to their rooms. Silence returned her question, heavy and foreboding. As if sensing her unrest, a gust billowed through the window slightly ajar, sending a chorus of whispers swirling into the room. Amanda squeezed her eyes shut, praying for sleep to overtake her. But when she opened them again, she was met not by the familiar shadows of her room, but by the twisted contours of a darkness that felt alive, a creeping tide that dripped with malice. "Stay close," she murmured to herself, the words barely leaving her lips when the lights flickered, plunging her into total darkness. Panic surged through her veins like ice. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to remember her resolve. With trembling hands, she snatched her phone from the nightstand. The glow offered a momentary comfort, illuminating her surroundings in stark, cruel clarity. But as she scanned the darkness, remorse gripped her heart. What if the true horror lay beyond the light? Suddenly, there was a rustle from the kids' room, a low sound, a moan? Panic struck again as she leapt from her bed. "Emma? Jake?" Her voice barely broke the stillness. Bursting into their room, the sight that greeted her, empty beds and rumpled sheets, sent her skin crawling. The faint scraping of something against the floor echoed behind her. She spun around, her breath catching in her throat as she faced the empty hallway. Shadows shifted, swirling closer, forming shapes that seemed almost human. "Mommy?" A soft voice called from behind her, making her jump. It was Emma, standing at the edge of the hall. "There's someone outside." Amanda's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "I saw him. He was in the backyard." Emma's tiny voice trembled. Glimmers of fear ignited within Amanda. What did he look like? Big, dark. He didn't move like a person should. Emma clutched her stuffed bear, shifting nervously on her feet. "Can we lock the door?" With resolve like steel, Amanda ushered her children back into their room, locking the door behind them. The echo of a child's laughter rippled through her mind, mingling with the threat hanging in the air. "No, it's fine," she tried to assure herself, but her voice wobbled. It wasn't fine. The whispers returned, louder now. They flooded the room, coiling around her, words she couldn't decipher, but felt deep in her bones. Amanda glanced at the window. A shadow darted outside, dark against the moonlight. Her heart raced. What if it wasn't just a shadow? What if it was hunting? Panic-stricken images of missing children danced violently through her thoughts as the air thickened with urgency. "Stay here," she said firmly to Emma and Jake, but something in her voice didn't convey confidence, only fear. Grabbing a flashlight from the bedside, she stepped towards the door. As she opened it, the whispers reached a fever pitch, wrapping around her like a shroud. She froze, contemplating if she was even brave enough to step into the unknown. Something waited just beyond the threshold, something that knew she was coming. In that moment, Amanda felt the overwhelming weight of loss, of a family being shattered by unseen hands. As she breathed in, a sensation clawed at her throat. Then she noticed something sparkling in the dim light from her phone. A glint in the shadows, a gleam of eyes fixated on her from the outside. And just like that, the laughter faded away. What came next could only be described as a scream, high-pitched, almost childlike. "Mommy, help!" Those words ripped through the night, ice-cold and filled with dread. Amanda felt her heart stop. Not just one child had gone missing tonight, but two. A darkness deeper than she could imagine was moving right next to her. What had she unleashed? Would she have to choose who to save? In a heartbeat, she realized something far worse lay waiting in the darkness. The whispers grew. "Come find us." Was it too late to turn back? Amanda hesitated, the flashlight trembling in her fingers. Instinct screamed for her to flee back into the safety of the room, to lock the door and hold her children tight. but a darker curiosity gnawed at her resolve, urging her forward. "Emma, stay hidden. I'll be right back." The words caught in her throat, thick with escalating fear. She inched back towards the doorframe, every nerve on fire. As the door creaked open, the whispers enveloped her, thick and suffocating. They sounded almost like laughter, mixed with cries, weaving together into an urgent song that beckoned her. The darkness pulsated, a living entity coaxing her into its grasp. With every step, she felt its chill creeping up her spine. Peering into the hallway, the air hung heavy with dread. The moon cast ghostly shadows that flickered
like unwelcome specters. "Jake! Emma!" she called softly, struggling to keep her voice steady while scanning the recesses of the unknown. Nothing, just the oppressive silence, almost mocking. Then a sound like shuffling feet reverberated from the living room, the unmistakable scuffle of something scraping against the floorboards. Without thinking, Amanda moved toward it, the flashlight beam slicing through the dark. In the living room, the shadows slinked back like a drawn curtain, and her breath hitched. There, on the floor, lay a dark figure, one that didn't resemble anything human. It writhed and twisted, limbs contorting grotesquely. Fleshy fingers clawed at the wood, leaving wicked scratches as it turned towards her, revealing a face that wasn't a face at all, a swirling mass of shadows and glints of something red. Panic collided with revulsion. She staggered back, gasping. Was this the thing Emma saw? What had slithered into their lives? "What do you want?" she yelled. But the creature only emitted a low growl, resonating with a depravity that chilled her bones. Then it spoke, the words slicing through the air. "You know, they want to play." A flicker of movement darted past her, and for a split second, she thought she saw Emma out of the corner of her eye. Emma? Her heart hammered violently against her ribs. The dark figure let out a laugh, low and rattling. "Come find them." It lurched toward her, and she felt its breath, fetid and cold against her skin. She pivoted and sprinted back towards the safety of the bedroom, desperate footsteps echoing in her ears. When she reached the door, she flung it open and slammed it shut behind her. "Emma!" she gasped, frantically searching the room. Jake and Emma both stood huddled together by the bed, their eyes wide, reflecting the pale light of the phone. "Mom," Emma whimpered, her skin a shade too pale. "It's getting in." The walls seemed to pulse with the creature's presence, the whispers now rising to a crescendo. "They want to play. Join us." In a flash of desperation, Amanda dropped to her knees before her children and gripped their shoulders. "Listen carefully. We must stick together, no matter what happens." But as she gazed into their frightened faces, something flickered in the darkness outside the room. Something large, moving just beyond the threshold. A shadow darker than the night. It hovered, still as death, eyes glimmering with an insatiable hunger. "Mommy," the children murmured, fear twisting their voices. In that agonizing moment, Amanda felt the weight of her choices crushing down. Outside the door, the creature, no, whatever darkness had slipped into their lives, seemed ready to take its claim. "We have to leave," she shouted, tearing her eyes from that lingering shadow. What waited outside? What had she brought into their home? The walls buzzed with whispers that promised unearthly horrors. And then a loud crack echoed. Something broke. The dark shadow surged forward, insistent and relentless. "Run!" she screamed. But as they darted towards the window, Amanda could hear it clearly now, the faintest sound of children laughing, taunting her to join. Would she stand and fight, or plunge into that darkness for the sake of her own? "What do you want?" she thought desperately, her heart racing for answers. But another chilling whisper followed, sliding along her spine. "You'll find out soon enough."
and in the dimming light of the flashlight, she felt the world shift under her feet. The cool air was alive with dread. Time was slipping away. The air grew thick as Amanda pushed her kids toward the window, her mind racing. The laughter taunted from the darkness, seeping into her thoughts. Just get out, she thought, glancing back at the door, which now quivered as if something heated was pressing against it. As she and the kids scrambled, the whispers sharpened, escalating into a frenzied chant that filled the room. It felt like icy fingers on her skin, pulling her back, trying to anchor her in place. The shadows at the threshold coiled tighter, a monstrous silhouette now pressing just out of view, and she felt the weight of impossibility bearing down. "Mom, what's happening?" Jake whispered, eyes darting nervously. "We'll figure it out," she barked, keeping her voice steady, betraying the panic swelling inside. But in her heart, she felt a sinister truth crawl at the edges of her consciousness. Just as Amanda managed to pry open the window, a feeble escape, there came a pulse of shadow, a push that shattered the glass, cascading shards onto the floor. She gasped, instinctively shielding her children, but it only prompted the entity to surge forward, the whispers pouring into her ears. "Time to join the play," it called, 1,000 voices twisting into one, an echo of every child's laughter she had ever known, yet drenched in malice. Before she could process it, the dark mass expanded, spilling into the room like smoke hungry for warmth. The air warped, distorting the light and sound. And there was Emma, eyes wide and entranced, moving away from Amanda's grasp. "No, Emma, come back!" But her voice was lost among the cacophony, the shadows pulling her daughter toward the heart of the darkness. Jake screamed, and Amanda felt a jolt of desperation strike her. She lunged to grab Emma, fingertips grazing her shirt as the shadows wrapped around her, thick as a storm. "Mommy, it's all right. They want to play." Emma's voice, a melody of innocence, mingled with the sinister chorus. Panic ignited in Amanda's chest, a wildfire consuming her resolve. "No, no," she shouted, yanking Emma back with a strength she didn't know she had. Sparks flew from the connection between them, and Emma's expression twisted as though battling an invisible force. The darkness shrieked, a sound that swelled with anger, vibrating through the very walls. For a brief, panicked moment, Amanda could see the hallway beyond, the night outside flickering with pale moonlight, a glimmer of hope urging her to escape. But then a shadow collapsed around them, smothering every spark of light like a storm swallowing the sun. "Mom!" Jake cried, terror peeling the words from his quaking lips. The shadows surged again, greedy hands reaching, molding into crooked arms that stretched toward them, grasping for flesh. In that chaos, Amanda spotted a glint, the cursed box lying near the shattered glass. She had almost forgotten it amidst the horror. Hadn't it carried whispers of its own, the promise of dark secrets? Could this box truly hold the key? Distracted by the flickering light from her phone, she hesitated, caught between two evils. "Hold on tight," she yelled, bundling Jake and Emma close as she lunged for the box. The shadows shrieked in fury, howling as it slipped through her grasp, enveloping her fingertips. Then she heard it, an unmistakable sound rolling through the whispers, sharp as a knife. "You can't escape until you play." Searching her mind for a plan, Amanda felt the ground tremble beneath the embrace of shadows, the darkness swirling with a hunger that threatened to consume her whole. Could this cursed box hold their salvation, or would it bind them deeper into the nightmare? As she touched the smooth surface of the box, the whispers quieted, awaiting her next move, as if time hung suspended. Just one chance, she thought, her heart in her throat. But she could sense the shadows waiting, for what would happen next could seal their fate forever. What would she unleash if she dared to open it? Would she find deliverance inside, or their end? With trembling hands, Amanda clutched the box, the coolness of its surface grounding her in the fray of chaos. The whispers lulled to a murmur, their sinister tones still echoing in the back of her mind. A heartbeat passed, then another, with the tension tightening like a noose around her neck. She could feel the shadows shift, swirling like a tempest hungry for her and the children. Emma, still entranced, took a reluctant step back, her tiny hand attempting to reach into the dark with a childlike curiosity. "Mommy, let's play!" "No, stay close," Amanda barked, refusing to let her daughter slip away again. Fear spiked in her chest like jagged glass. With every heartbeat, the shadows throbbed, pulsating in rhythmic anticipation. Amanda's instincts screamed at her. This was the moment. She had to choose. The box was a gateway, a chance for salvation or damnation. And the wicked laughter grew louder, drowning her thoughts in its chaos. "Open it," a voice hissed, a slithering whisper that wrapped around her mind. "Let it show you the way." A glance at Jake, eyes wide and terrified, made her decision solidify. She shook her head at the whispering lullaby. This would not be how they fell, enthralled by darkness, swept away into its embrace. Amanda took a deep breath, steadying her shaking hands. "Stay back," she commanded, hoisting the box closer. With all her strength, she pulled the lid. It
Creaked, the sound eerily echoing like a harbinger of doom. Inside, faded photographs fluttered, images of children frozen in time, eyes blackened and hollow, mouths stretched into raucous grins. A small toy, a tattered doll with missing buttons and a crooked smile, stared back at her, somehow malevolent. "Mom, it's freaking me out!" Jake whimpered, inching closer to her. "Don't look!" Amanda shouted, her voice breaking as she felt the pull of the box. The shadows wailed, as if resisting her action, churning around her like a watery abyss, but her resolve hardened. She knew she had to confront whatever lay buried there, whatever curse was unleashed. The air thickened, electric and charged with unspoken memories. She reached deeper, feeling the cold of the unknown wrap around her fingers. A small charm, a twisted piece of metal, caught her attention. As she grasped it tightly, a flood of images rushed through her mind. Children laughing, playing, moments of joy suddenly turning into horror, screams slicing through their joy like glass. The darkness swirled aggressively, shrieking in fury. "Play!" it cried again, an echo of torment reverberating in the room. "Join them!" Amanda gritted her teeth, pulling her children closer. These aren't just games, this is a trap. The shadows, now swirling faster, grasped at her, clawed at her sanity. The room seemed to twist, expanding and collapsing, with the cries of lost children resonating in her ears like thunder. Each breath she took sent icy needles through her lungs. "Open the box further! Let them out!" They were desperate now, the once sweet laughter now transformed into something sinister, demanding. The harmony of voices crescendoed, the shadows around them pulsing with life. Amanda's heart raced. If she opened the box completely, what would come spilling out? What would she unleash? "Mommy, do something!" Emma whimpered, her small voice almost lost in the tempest. With a final surge from the darkness, Amanda's grip slipped. The box fell, the lid flipping wide open, and then the world exploded in chaos. The photos spilled into the air like butterflies, swirling shadows rising with them. "No!" she screamed as the shadows darted out, sweeping across the room with ravenous speed. The faces of lost children began to emerge, their laughter mingling with sorrow, grief spilling out like a black tide. In that moment, Amanda understood. The box didn't just hold secrets. It held a piece of the cursed game that bound them, a pact forged in despair. And now, the shadows were coming to claim them. "Run," she shouted, her heart thudding like a war drum. With desperation slicing through her thoughts, she turned to flee, eyes on the window, as the encroaching darkness crashed together like hungry wolves. But when she looked back, a figure emerged from the swirling mass, its eyes locked onto hers. Familiar, yet twisted? Was it hope or doom that awaited her in the shadows? There was no time to think. Would she have the strength to resist the pull of the darkness? Or would it finally take her? The laughter grew louder, drowning, as the figure began to step forward, stretching its hand toward her. Amanda's heart pounded in her chest, a wild drum summoning adrenaline as she yanked her children away from the chaos that erupted in the room. The shadows writhed like serpents, pressing closer, hungry and relentless. The figure within those darkened layers grew clearer. It was a child. No, not just any child. It looked like Emma, her face twisted in a haunting mimicry of innocence. "Mommy," the figure called out, its voice impossibly sweet, layering the air with a syrupy taint. The dark veil around it shimmered, warping the semblance of her daughter into a grotesque parody. Amanda felt a shiver crawl up her spine, freezing her in place. "Emma! Jake! This isn't her!" Amanda screamed, her voice raw with terror. But the darkness was closing in. With every heartbeat, the laughter erupted and intertwined, creating a cacophony that threatened to swallow her whole. "Come play with us," the twisted child sang, stretching a hand toward her, beckoning her closer. "No!" Amanda screamed, shaking her head violently. She pulled Jake and Emma tighter against her, blocking out the sight of the malignant figure. "Mommy, don't go," Emma whimpered, clinging to her tightly, with eyes wide, terrified, yet drawn in by the shadows that promised games and laughter. Amanda's stomach twisted. She could see the seductive glow of despair shining in her daughter's eyes. Time blurred. Desperation sharpened her resolve. "We need to go." She pulled her children around, but the shadows stirred violently, swirling back as if the box had unleashed a tempest of despair. It felt as if she could cut through the air, the laughter echoing in her skull. "Take us home," Jake begged, his voice thick with emotion. Amanda suppressed the pang of hopelessness clawing at her gut. This wasn't home. This place was a prison, an echo chamber of sorrow sealed in that cursed box. But as she prepared to bolt towards the door, the laughter shifted, morphing into insistent whispers that clawed at her thoughts. "Join us. You can't leave." The shadows danced around her feet, snatching at her ankles, winding like a snake. Amanda pulled her children closer, her heart plummeting. "We can't stay. We can't." Every instinct screamed to flee, but the voice echoed, imploring her to listen. Imagination twisted, turning the whispers into seductive temptations, promises of safety wrapped in the warmth of childish laughter. Amanda stumbled, fear blazing in her chest as the room constricted. "Mommy, I want to go," Emma wailed, her small body shivering, feeling the icy tendrils of fear taking hold. Suddenly, a rush of air blew through the room, scattering the photographs, still swirling like the wings of trapped birds. Amanda's eyes darted to the window, the only escape. But the darkness began to throb and pulse, coiling tighter around them. She could almost hear the shadows grind their teeth in anticipation. Not yet. The dark camaraderie shrieked, almost hurt. "Jake!" Amanda shouted. "We're going now!"
With every ounce of strength, she yanked her son forward, racing toward the window. The shadows bellowed, grasping at her, clawing her back, but she pressed on. Glass glinted ominously ahead, reflecting fractured images of her tormented family. Just as she reached the window, a harsh cackle reverberated around them. In an instant, she felt the pull of the shadows trying to drag her down. One last desperate glance over her shoulder revealed her daughter, still ensnared by the figure's enchanting gaze. "Emma, come now!" Amanda screamed, pushing against an unseen force. The familiar twisted face smiled wider, revealing an unnatural void where its teeth should be, echoing the laughter now mixed with her daughter's cries. Then, bam! The window shattered, shards raining around her like glittering stars, slicing through the encroaching darkness. But there was nothing but the void beyond, a black hole threatening to yank them in. "Emma!" But it was too late. The darkness surged forward, an avalanche of torment, hungry for their souls, sweeping her children back, pulling them into the depths of despair. The window was open, but would they make it through? Would their light pierce the heart of the dark, or would they succumb to its embrace? As Amanda lunged forward, she didn't feel her body move. The shadows coiled around her, a promise and a curse. Was this how it ended? In that dread-drenched moment, she realized who was truly calling her into the dark. And as the darkness advanced, she was consumed by the weight of their gaze. "Mommy!" came the terrified cries, fading as shadows cloaked her entire being. The world hung suspended, trapped in heart-stopping terror, as a single thought pierced the chaos. What if the real game had just begun? A deafening silence settled, and Amanda felt the cold seep into her bones, paralyzing her with dread. She was surrounded by darkness, but not just any darkness. It was alive, pulsating as if the shadows were breathing, tasting the fear in the air like a predator savoring its prey. "Mommy!" The cries of her children spiraled in the void, sharply echoing like distant gunshots. Tugging against the weighted gloom, Amanda clenched her fists, her pulse racing. She couldn't afford to go under, not now, not ever. Images of warm sunlight and laughter danced behind her eyelids. She squeezed her eyes shut, desperately clinging to the memory of their last picnic in the park, the sound of their joy lifting her spirit. But that warmth slipped further away as the laughter of the twisted child returned, coiling around her thoughts. "Come play with us." Suddenly, a flash of ice coursed through her veins, and she felt hands gripping at her ankles, pulling her down into the abyss. She let out a scream, a primal sound of desperation that echoed in the dark. "No! Get away!" With sheer force of will, she fought against the pull. "I won't lose them!" Grabbing the air, she swung her arms in wild circles, and finally, a thin sliver of light appeared, shimmering like hope. 100 feet in front of her, she spotted Emma and Jake, shadows pulled around them as they struggled against the smiles of the grotesque figures, the dark children. The sight tore at her heart. "Hold on!" Amanda shouted, breaking through the whispers swarming her mind. "I'm coming!" With adrenaline surging, she waded deeper into the void, determination fueling her each step. Shadows lashed around her, snapping at her with sharp, hungry teeth. Fear clawed at her sanity, whispering lies about their safety. Every instinct begged her to turn back, but she didn't falter. "Mommy, please!" Jake cried, the sound laced with terror. She felt it pierce deeply into her chest, igniting a blazing urgency within her. The reality of their situation gripped her throat, tightening as she dashed forward. She reached them just as the figures began circling tighter, their eyes glinting like obsidian. "Get away from them!" Amanda bellowed, shoving against the inky shapes. Her hands collided with something soft, yet solid. "Mommy!" Emma cried, snatched up by the same dark tendrils that had taken their father, the man haunting her thoughts, behind the fading whispers. "Emma!" The cry erupted from her throat, carried away by the darkness. The shadows seemed to recoil, swirling in confusion. For a moment, a flicker of clarity broke through the darkness. Amanda locked eyes with Emma. Time slowed as she reached out, their fingers almost touching, the gap bridged by sheer will. "Jump!" Amanda screamed. "I'll catch you!" With a desperate leap, Emma lunged toward Amanda, their fingers almost brushing against one another as the shadows snarled, diving in to prevent the reunion. And in that moment, Amanda tightened her grip, baring her teeth against the malignant force. "Let her go!" she shouted, throwing every ounce of her fury into the air. But the shadows pressed closer, an overwhelming tide pushing against them, trying to pull them apart. "Mommy, please!" Emma's voice faded again, panic gripping Amanda's heart. The haunting child smirked, whispering sweetly, "You're too late." Just as Amanda's hope began to dwindle, a bright flash erupted, illuminating the room for a heartbeat. Shadows hissed and recoiled, whispering curses against the light that invaded their suffocating domain. But it was fleeting. The glow faded into the dark just as suddenly as it had appeared, plunging everything back into oppressive silence. "Mommy?" Jake's small voice quivered in the void. "What's happening?" The terrible weight pressed down on Amanda again, and she knew the truth. The real game had only just begun, and the darkness was preparing its next move. "Don't look!" Amanda shouted, feeling the presence of unseen eyes watching, waiting. What horrors were yet to come? The darkness responded with a tumultuous roar, promising a reckoning as it lunged forward. "Hold on to me!" Amanda cried, with a fierce resolve, ready to confront the terror that had claimed them. And for just a heartbeat, she wondered if they could escape, or if the dark would finally claim them all. Amanda felt the ground tremble beneath them, as if the earth itself was warping in response to the shadows. She could hear the scraping of claws against the floor, a sinister melody sung by unseen monsters. Jake clung to her arm, his body trembling in sheer terror. Emma's cries were still echoing in her head, those desperate, heart-wrenching calls pulling her deeper into the abyss. "Stay close," Amanda urged, panic sharpening her voice as she scanned the darkness. She couldn't let them be separated. The obsidian eyes of the dark figures glittered like stars, encroaching upon her family, suffocating the air with dread. What exactly were they? Were they lost souls, twisted remnants of children who had once played in the sun? Suddenly, the whispers turned cacophonous, a wild torrent of laughter mixing with screams. "Join us and play forever!" The very walls of her mind clenched at the haunting resonance, but she pushed back against their allure. "Enough!" Amanda shouted, her voice cracking like thunder. "You won't have my children!" A gust of wind, foul and icy, swept around them, sending her hair whipping wildly. It was as if the darkness felt her defiance and retaliated. Amanda felt a claw-like grip on her shoulder. She twisted around, staring into the face of a shadow. It was devoid of features, but radiated malevolence. "Embrace the darkness," it hissed, words curling like smoke. "Let them go!" She swung at the figure, her fist connecting with something cold but solid. It recoiled and darted back, a sharp growl enveloping its retreat. "Mommy, I'm scared," Jake whimpered, and Amanda's heart cracked a little more. "Stay strong, buddy," she reassured, half believing her own words. "We'll find a way out." The shadows were warping around them, a dark maze shifting constantly, blocking their escape. Then, from somewhere deep in the darkness, another voice rang out. It was sweet, mocking, pulling at her reason. You can't escape us. You're already ours. No, Amanda shouted defiantly, every inch of her body screaming as the shadows twisted around her, trying to suffocate her resolve. She had to fight. Remembering the fleeting light, Amanda closed her eyes, focusing all her energy on conjuring that memory, the brightness that had pierced the darkness. As faint as it had felt, it was enough to ignite a spark within her. "Light!" she yelled, thrusting her hands forward. "I want light!" For a horrifying second, she thought nothing would happen. Then, an explosion of brilliance emerged from her palms. It was raw, a surge of pure energy that pushed the shadows back. The figures howled in rage, their features distorting but never disappearing. "Keep your eyes on me," she commanded, locking them in place with her fierce stare. Jake squeezed her hand tighter, determination lining his small face, even as terror flickered in his eyes. But the light was waning, fading just as quickly. "Come on," she urged, searching frantically for a path amidst the curling darkness. And finally, it appeared, a narrow corridor of faint light leading farther into the void. "This way!" she shouted, seizing Jake's hand firmly. They sprinted, but the shadows clawed at their backs. Each step felt like wading through thick mud. The whispers grew frantic, pulling her thoughts apart, doubts swarming. What if this is a trap? Just then, a shrill laugh pierced the air. "You think you can run?" Amanda turned instinctively, but nothing was there. It sent her heart racing. Traps or no traps, she wouldn't let them daunt her. "Hold on," she cried, forcing them onward. A faint flicker of warmth ignited in her chest, urging her to push through. The moment they hit the light, strands of darkness shattered around them, leaving Amanda gasping. She glanced back, breathless, as the malevolent figures wailed, their forms strangled by the brightness. "Keep moving!" But just as hope surged, a deep rumble echoed above them. The ground shook again, more violently, and Amanda stumbled. "What's happening?" Jake shouted, fear hanging thick in the air. Amanda's heart raced as she felt the ground beneath them split into a gaping maw, darkness spilling forth. "Run!" she yelled, pulling her children forward as the shadows cried out, hungry. And as they sprinted toward the light at the end, Amanda realized the darkness was no longer just an obstacle. It was transforming, growing, evolving, readying itself for something far more sinister. Somewhere, faint but chilling, came the laughter of the twisted child again. "You can't outrun me forever." What awaited them at the end of this path? Would the light hold true, or would they plunge deeper into horror? The darkness loomed, waiting. The corridor swallowed them like a hungry beast, its light flickering, wavering in deceptive rhythm as they raced through. Amanda's heart hammered against her ribs. Each thud echoed her fears and whispered doubts. She could feel the air shift behind, heavy with the weight of pursuers eager to reclaim their prey. They weren't just running from shadows anymore. They were fleeing terror itself. "Mom," Jake's voice pierced the din of her thoughts. "What if they catch us?" She didn't have an answer. The darkness was relentless and had a life of its own, pulsing like a heartbeat. "We have to keep going. Don't stop." The shadows behind them hissed, a sound so full of malice that it made her skin crawl. "Join us. Join us." "I won't," Amanda yelled, pushing her body faster, squeezing Jake's hand tighter. Emma was somewhere out there, in that malevolent dark. She had to be, and they had to find her. As they ran, the corridor twisted, disorienting them. Walls shimmered and shifted in grotesque forms, their surfaces writhing like the skin of a dying creature. Amanda felt a cold sweat trickling down her back, and dread gnawed at her gut. "What if we're just going in circles?" Jake whimpered, his voice small in the chaos.
Ignoring the pang of uncertainty, Amanda forced herself to remain focused. "We're getting out. We will find Emma." Suddenly, the dim light surged, illuminating the path ahead. It flickered back to life like a sudden explosion, revealing a clearing ahead. Blue tendrils of shadow danced around its edges, but the light was bright enough to hold them at bay. "Look!" Jake pointed, his eyes wide with hope. Amanda slowed, heart hammering, breathing in ragged gasps. Together, they entered the clearing, a small oasis in the persistent dark. It was eerie in its stillness, as if it had been untouched by the chaos surrounding them. Scattered debris encircled a small stone altar drenched in an otherworldly glow. "What is this place?" Jake asked, inching close, curiosity overcoming fear. Before Amanda could answer, a terrible shriek echoed through the void. Those echoes carried a familiar, painful pitch, Emma's voice twisted in agony. It pierced through Amanda, a jagged sound that threatened to unravel her resolve. "We have to find her, now!" She lunged toward the altar, the only solid piece of reality in this nightmare. As soon as she reached out to touch the stone, darkness swarmed back, flooding the clearing. She gasped as shadows wrapped around her wrists, yanking her backwards, dragging her toward the void. The altar glowed fiercely, but it felt worlds away, untouchable as she struggled against the tightening grip. "Mom, help!" Jake cried, his scream slicing through the terror enveloping them. Amanda felt his panic feed her own. "Hold on, Jake!" she shouted, desperate but resolute. "Let them go!" A voice thundered above the chaos, deep and echoing, yet oddly calm. Shadows hesitated, quivering as they recognized the source. A figure emerged, cloaked in light, taking shape outside the altar's radiance. It was tall and imposing, with a visage both terrifying and comforting. Amanda couldn't breathe, her heart thundered louder, racing against the power of this new entity. "Who are you?" she barely managed to ask. "I am the gatekeeper," the figure replied, its voice a low rumble. "And they cannot trap you, not forever." With a swift motion, the gatekeeper thrust out a hand, and streams of light shot from its fingers. The darkness shrieked, crackling and fleeing like a scared animal. It released its hold on Amanda and sending them sprawling onto the ground. "Go, find the child," the gatekeeper commanded, urgency lining its words. Amanda scrambled back to her feet, adrenaline surging. "Come on," she urged Jake, pulling him close. The shadows recovered their form, swirling angrily around them, intent on reclaiming what they'd lost. "Wait!" Jake cried, his eyes darting around. "What about you? What are you going to do?" "I'll hold it off. It's now or never." No more hesitation. Amanda's heart filled with frightful determination as she heard Emma's voice in the distance, equally trapped and hopeless. "Let's go!" she shouted, and together they charged through the dissipating shadows, the feeling of light trailing behind them like a lifeline. But a deep, terrifying growl rumbled from the depths. "You think you can escape? It only gets worse from here." And as they plunged deeper into the maw of the unknown, the laughter began anew, echoing as though the darkness was waiting for them to falter. Would they find Emma beyond this newest wave of terror, or was the worst yet to come? The darkness pulsed and writhed, a living entity determined to reclaim what had evaded its grasp. Amanda's heart thundered in her chest, driven by a primal despair as she tightened her grip on Jake's hand. They surged forward through the shadows, a whirlwind of emotions swirling in her thoughts, fear, hope, and an unyielding instinct to protect her children. "Mommy, I can hear her!" Jake shouted, pointing ahead. The sound of Emma's voice echoed through the shadows, each call driving Amanda to move faster, urgency igniting every fiber of her being. "Keep calling to her," Amanda urged. "We'll find her."
As they dove deeper into the twilight realm, the whispers morphed from chaotic laughter into panicked cries, weaving through the darkness surrounding them. Each step felt as if they were quicksand, dragging them deeper into peril. But Amanda wouldn't yield to the shadows. Suddenly, a glimmer of light appeared in the distance. It fought with the encroaching darkness, illuminating the horrors swirling around them. The shadows flickered as if unsure of their own existence. "Keep moving," she urged, pulling Jake along. The light seemed to pulse brighter with each stride they took, a beacon of hope cutting through despair. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, a small child stumbling forward into the glow. Amanda's breath caught. "Emma!" She rushed toward her daughter, fear and relief cascading through her as she reached for her. But just as she grasped Emma's arm, the dark masses shifted, tendrils shooting toward them with a piercing hunger. "No! Let them go!" Amanda screamed, standing protectively over Jake and Emma. The shadows recoiled momentarily, but their rage was a wildfire, igniting once again with a vengeance. "Mommy!" Jake cried, clinging to Amanda's leg, his voice shaking with fear. As the darkness surged forward, Amanda felt the weight of impending doom crushing around them. She locked eyes with Emma, and understanding passed between them. "Just like before!" she exclaimed. "We have to combine our strength!" "Hold hands!" Amanda shouted, quickly forming a circle, linking their fingers together. The warmth of her children filled her with courage, igniting a spark flickering deep within her soul. The realization struck her like lightning. Together, they held the power to push back the darkness. With a determined inhale, Amanda summoned all the love, hope, and courage she had. "Listen to me, darkness!" she yelled. "You will not take my family!" In that instant, she felt an eruption of energy. The shadows began to waver, a crack in their malevolent facade forming. Swiftly, Amanda focused on the light within her, remembering the picnic, the warmth of sun on their faces, moments of pure joy. "Together, we will break the curse!" Amanda shouted. "Let light banish your darkness!" The children echoed her words, their voices ringing out in defiance. The warmth became fierce, engulfed them, illuminating the shadows with blinding brilliance. The darkness shrieked, a cacophony that rattled the very fabric of their existence. "No, you can't leave!" The whispers rose into a shrill crescendo as the light engulfed them, slicing through the malicious grasp like a hot knife through butter. Moments stretched painfully, the air thick with tension, but Amanda held on, her family united, defiant and fierce. The shadows writhed, recoiling in terror as the light surged through them, stronger than ever. And then the world exploded. A wave of blinding light washed over the darkness, shimmering like liquid sun. The shadows howled, twisting and collapsing upon themselves, consumed by the brilliance. Hand in hand, they charged forward, breaking free from the last remnants of malevolence. The oppressive darkness shattered around them like glass, revealing a tranquil world bathed in soft, warm light. Gasping for breath, they stumbled into a grassy field, sunlight flooding their vision, and the oppressive weight of the night disappeared instantly. Amanda fell to her knees, pulling her children into a fierce embrace, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. The air was fresh, alive with promise. The laughter of the wind mingled with the echoes of their victory. They had emerged, miraculously unscathed. "Are we safe, Mommy?" Jake whispered, searching his mother's eyes. "Yes," she breathed, kissing both their foreheads. "We are safe." Behind them, remnants of shadow faded like smoke, remnants of the nightmare encroaching on their reality. As they lingered in the embrace of freedom and light, Amanda felt the lingering pull of shadows, but knew the battle had been won. Much later, Amanda looked out at the setting sun, the colors radiating warmth and hope, gazing down at her children with promise for the future. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, a vow melted into the fading light. and together they took the first steps toward their new dawn, the darkness forever memory, buried in the earth where it belonged. For Amanda, courage was a choice, and love's light would forever guide them. So, if you felt the chill of Amanda's story, if you were gripped by the darkness alongside her and loved the victory of light, don't let this moment pass without showing your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you never miss another story like this again. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let us know how much you love these tales. And we want to hear from you in the comments. Flood the section with your reactions and theories about what you think could happen next. Finally, this is your moment. Grab your phone and instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to be part of this
journey. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel.